The room was quiet, almost unbearably so. An elderly man sat alone, eyes fixed on an empty chair across from him. His voice trembled as he whispered, "If only they listened sooner. Their lives would have been different." There was a weight in his words, a gravity no one could ignore. "The greatest regrets you'll ever hear," he thought, "are from people who can't fix them anymore." Every sigh, every pause, told a story of missed chances, of wisdom ignored, of voices silenced by arrogance and distraction. Around him, the world carried on, busy with its screens and fleeting victories, blind to the truths that had taken a lifetime to learn. He was the embodiment of experience, the hero of lessons hard-earned, staring at a society seduced by ego and impatience. This wasn't just one man's sorrow. It was a reflection of a nation, of a generation chasing noise over meaning. And yet, as he leaned closer, his eyes glinting with something fierce and urgent, it became clear. What he was about to share wasn't ordinary advice. It wasn't just a memory or a warning. It was a revelation. And what he revealed next wasn't just advice. It was a warning, and it shook everyone in the room.
Society had become a race against itself, sprinting toward fleeting achievements and empty validations. Every scroll, every notification, every hurried conversation pushed the voices of experience further into the background. The elders, the quiet heroes of hard-earned wisdom, were being drowned out by a chorus of ego, impatience, and pride. They had lived through mistakes, heartbreak, and sacrifice, yet their lessons were often met with dismissal or distraction. Meanwhile, the younger generation chased instant gratification, unaware that the very shortcuts they pursued were building walls around their hearts. Loneliness grew in the spaces left by ignored guidance. Burnout seeped into every ambition, and identity blurred under the weight of comparison and distraction. And yet, hidden in that silence, the elders had a truth that could pierce through the chaos. There's one lesson that almost every old person repeats, but younger people only understand when it's too late. It was a cautionary signal, a reminder that the wisdom of decades isn't just nostalgia, it's survival, clarity, and direction. And as the tension in the room thickened, it became impossible to ignore. And that takes us to the first shock they shared.
The villain wasn't a face or a name, it was a force, a quiet tyranny of ego and arrogance. It lived in every hurried reply, every dismissive glance, every thought that assumed knowledge without experience. Meet Alex, a young professional, brilliant on paper, but blind to the lessons whispered by those who came before him. He skipped family dinners, ignored his aging parents' advice, and traded real connection for likes and fleeting applause online. Opportunities slipped through his fingers because he believed he already knew better. Friendships frayed, romances faltered, and a gnawing emptiness settled where gratitude and understanding should have grown. His pride became a cage, his digital obsession a mirror reflecting only himself. Meanwhile, the elders watched silently, their own mistakes etched in their faces, their hearts heavy with the cost of ignoring wisdom too late. They had loved, lost, and learned, but Alex was blind to the same patterns, blind to the hero waiting in patience and experience. The arrogance of youth had claimed another casualty, yet its defeat was not inevitable. And, as Alex's world teetered on the edge of regret, a different story began to emerge. But then comes the other side of the story, the hero we rarely acknowledge.
Sheila had raised 3 children alone, her hands calloused from years of work, her nights sleepless, her heart heavy with worry. but always full of love. Raj, a retired soldier, carried invisible scars from battles fought abroad, yet his eyes held a quiet wisdom no textbook could teach. Mrs. Alvarez, an old teacher, had poured decades of her life into classrooms, shaping minds while sacrificing her own comfort, often going without so others could thrive. And Thomas, a father who spent years chasing money and success, now looked back at lost birthdays and empty family dinners, realizing the true cost of misplaced priorities. Each had faced hardship, immigration struggles, wars that stole friends, heartbreaks that tested their resilience, the challenge of rebuilding from nothing. But they had survived. They carried lessons written in lived experience, forged through trial and triumph, lessons that no lecture or viral trend could replicate. Their stories intertwined into a tapestry of patience, resilience, and hard-won clarity, a living repository of truths the world too often ignored. And as these voices gathered, a hush fell over the room. Every listener felt the weight of years, the depth of sacrifice, the undeniable authority of experience. And then, the moment of truth arrived, the lesson none of them expected to hit so hard. The room shifted as the elders began to speak, their voices calm but piercing, cutting through the noise of distraction. "You will never win against time," one said, and a shiver ran through those who had spent their days chasing deadlines and fleeting trends. "If you lose your family, you lose everything," another added, and a young man's jaw tightened as memories he had ignored rose unbidden. "Silence is stronger than half the arguments you'll ever have," whispered a grandmother, and eyes darted around, realizing how often words had destroyed what could have been saved by listening. "Love doesn't die, attention does," intoned a retired soldier, and hearts clenched at the truth buried beneath neglect and neglectful pride. Some resisted, brushing off the words as old-fashioned or irrelevant, the villainous arrogance of youth still whispering that experience had no place in their fast-paced lives. Others sat frozen, quietly reckoning with every missed call, every skipped visit, every regret that had been accumulating unnoticed. Slowly, tension gave way to realization. The lessons were not gentle suggestions. They were urgent commands from those who had lived and learned. And as the elders paused, letting their words sink in, it became clear nothing had prepared them for the mic-drop wisdom that followed.
You think people stay in your life because they love you? No. They stay because you value them. An elder's voice cut through the room, steady and unyielding. Silence fell, heavier than any noise before, as eyes widened and hearts clenched. One day, your parents will call your name for the last time. Don't wait for that day to realize what they meant, another added, and a young woman's hands trembled as the truth sank in. You are not tired, you are unfulfilled, whispered a retired soldier, and the weight of ignored purpose pressed on everyone present. You're not scared of failure, you're scared of what people will say, intoned a teacher, her eyes glistening, and the arrogant heads slowly bowed, pride giving way to recognition. Tears rolled silently down faces that had once scoffed at advice. The room seemed to breathe collectively, each pause, each sigh amplifying the truth being laid bare. The elders did not yell, they did not demand, they revealed, they illuminated, they dismantled the defenses of ego and ignorance with quiet authority. Every lesson landed like a hammer against steel, breaking illusions and planting seeds of clarity. The arrogance that once ruled this space began to crumble, replaced with awe and understanding. And then came the moment that sent shockwaves far beyond that room.
Within hours, the room's revelations spilled into the world. Clips of elders' words circulated across screens, each phrase dissected, shared, and stitched into viral moments. Hashtags trended: listen to elders, life lessons, value time. Grandparent quotes flooded timelines, sparking debates, reflections, and tears in living rooms from coast to coast. Celebrities stitched reactions, praising the timeless wisdom, while commentators dissected the generational lessons, marveling at the stark contrast between arrogance and experience. The ripple effect was immediate and profound. Families began calling, apologizing, reconnecting. Children sat down with parents they had ignored. Strangers reached out to make amends, and young adults questioned the priorities they had taken for granted. Across cities and neighborhoods, the nation collectively paused, leaning in to hear what had long been drowned out by speed and distraction. For a moment, the world slowed, the noise faded, and wisdom took center stage. Arrogance met reflection, impatience met patience, and ego met truth. What had once been dismissed as old-fashioned advice now became a blueprint for living with purpose, dignity, and attention. And yet, even amid the viral storm, even as screens lit up with admiration and wonder, a deeper truth lingered. But even the viral storm wasn't the real ending. The real lesson came after.
The elders' words settled like a tide, washing over hearts and minds alike. It became clear that this wasn't just advice, it was a mirror, reflecting the choices, regrets, and potential each person carried. Life doesn't reward the fastest, it rewards the wisest. In that reflection, dignity shone brighter than any fleeting victory. Patience proved stronger than impulsive triumphs, and humility outweighed every boast of pride. Families reconnected, conversations deepened, and gratitude replaced neglect. The impatient paused, the distracted noticed, the arrogant softened. Society itself began to shift, if only subtly, toward meaning over noise, toward values that outlast likes and applause. Each listener felt it, a personal awakening, a realization that time, attention, and love were currencies no wealth could replace. The hero, the wisdom of those who had lived, sacrificed, and endured, had prevailed, not through force, but through undeniable truth. What once seemed trivial now demanded action, reflection, and change. In homes, streets, and online, small ripples became waves of transformation. A nation quietly realigning with values it had too often ignored. And in the end, one final truth remained, the truth that changes people forever.